Good morning or good afternoon, depends on the hour. Very warm welcome from my side to our session, Mitigating Floods and Droughts, Innovative Approaches for Closing Urban Water Cycles, where we want to focus really on what urban water cycles can do to prevent disasters triggered by climate change in cities. A close look on our agenda for today. So my name is Michael Eichholz from BGR, and I will give a short introduction to the topics, disasters and urban water systems. And after that, we will have two examples from cities. The first one is by Sonja Schlipp from Hamburg Wasser, so Hamburg's water utility. She will speak about stormwater management in Hamburg, the transformation to a sponge city by a multi-stakeholder approach. And after that, we will have Pierre von Rendsburg from the city of Windhoek. He will talk about another major disaster that is droughts, and the title will be Mitigation Through Innovation, Sustainable Water Supply in Windhoek. And after that, we have a wrap-up and closing by my colleague Ramon Brandführer from BGR also. So happy to welcome you all from the virtual space and in Glasgow. I hope you will enjoy the session. And I will start right away to highlight the two major disasters we are dealing with today, floods and droughts, which are hitting cities all over the world very hard. And it's not climate change that started to provoke such disasters, but expectations and prognosis for climate change foresee a sharp increase of extreme events such as floods and droughts in cities. So we see here examples from Los Angeles or Sacramento, from California, where droughts are becoming more frequent. In the last year, we see a picture from Cape Town where in 2018 there was a major water crisis that brought the city close to the day zero, and we see flooding here. An example from Sri Lanka that is affecting cities very hard, causing losses in infrastructure and also provoking health issues. I would like to give as an introduction a systemic view of how water cycles are made up traditionally and what this has to do with disasters in the context of climate change. So we see here a schematic view of an urban water cycle and the traditional approach. So we have in many cities of the world where water system built by which surface water or rainwater is directed to reservoirs. The rain is collected and drained from the city in order not to provoke health, not to provoke flooding and evacuate the city from the water from the city. We have the supply system that are working with surface and groundwater, brings water to the waterworks, the two treatment plants. We have then the water is distributed by the supply systems to the consumption, to the users. And then the water is discharged to sewers and treated as wastewater and finally given back to streams and flows to surface water. And this traditional system is coming to a crisis, so to say, as the climate conditions are changing. So more heavy rainfall events and more drought are provoking that the hydrological side of the system is changing. We have major rainfall events that are exceeding the capacity of the drainage system, and we have major droughts that are exceeding the capacity of the water storage systems that have been built. So storage dams are running dry because of lack of rainfall for many years. And so this brings many cities to a situation of crisis, which triggers also a rethinking of how this urban water cycle and the urban water systems can be converted and transformed towards resilient supply. So some transforming solutions that are brought up in the literature, and also some cities are taking this journey and in innovating in many things. But the core aspects and concepts are the increase of recharge. So this relates to the groundwater. So have decentralized recharge facilities that try to close the water cycle within the cities. There's another strategy is to increase the storage by augmenting the storage dams, and also using the aquifer as a storage solution. We will hear of that in our second example. And also, of course, of importance is the consumption, reduce and the consumption, and make efficient use of water within the cities. And the core aspect is also to reuse the water that has been used by the public, by industries, and also by agriculture. So the term of wastewater in many cities is being reviewed, and it is seen more and more as a resource than as a burden that has to be evacuated out of the city. So what is the transformation about? I think, and the point I want to raise here is that urban supply systems are more than technical infrastructure, that a supply system connects the resource with the user from a very basic perspective, and it comprises not only technology, but also institutions that manage the technological infrastructure, but also knowledge and everyday practices of users and of the people that are managing these systems. And a transformation of a supply system, therefore, it's not only about introducing a new technology, but also reviewing the institutional setups, the knowledge exchange, and also the practices in place. So, without further ado, and we will come now to two practical examples, as I said in the beginning, where we can see how two cities are approaching this transformation in order to prevent floods and droughts. And the first example is from Hamburg. So it's a pleasure for me to welcome Dr. Sonja Schlipp from Hamburg Wasser, Hamburg's water utility here. She's working for Hamburg Wasser, in the Department for Integrated Stormwater Management. And she's working since 2007 in several projects about climate change adaptation and urban planning. And thus has a lot of strategic and practical experience in the field. So the floor is yours, Sonja. Happy to hear your contribution.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. I hope everybody can hear me. And I hope I'm now able to share my screen like I want to do it. It's always, and okay. I think it works now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I see what I wanted to see. It's always an adventure to present like that, because every time it's different. Yeah, but thank you for the invitation, for taking part in the water pavilion here. And I'm looking forward to my presentation and to the discussion we have afterwards, hopefully. So I'm like to talk about stormwater management in Hamburg and how we try to implement it, and how we try to include all the stakeholders which are needed to do this transformation. So my talk I will talk about the challenges of water and sanitation systems in Hamburg with regards to climate change and urban growth, the planning of adaptation measures, the implementation of those measures, and the cross-sectoral integration at the city level, and we'll give a short outlook on it. But first of all, I want to show you this picture. This is the entrance for one of the oldest sewage systems in Germany and in north of Europe. We have it since 1845, I think, and this is the entrance which was built for the Emperor William the second to visit this sewage system because it was that new. Hamburg Wasser is a utility which is responsible for the water supply and also for the wastewater management, and we have different consulting services as well, and still have Hamburg Energy is another company which provides renewable energies for Hamburg, just as an introduction where I come from and where I'm working for. And I'm working in the department for integrated rainwater management. So just an outlook to our drainage system. Since it is very old, about more than 200 years old, we have in the middle this combined sewer system, which provides the service for the whole city. And in the outer areas, we have a separated sewer system with wastewater sewers and stormwater sewers. So we have two systems in one city, and we have one plant which cleans the water. So it's a sewage plant. The challenges for stormwater management are that they are coming so fast. And we are faced in Hamburg with this as well. So you can see here one example of one stormwater event. The water is on the street and the runoff is not that fast. So that means Hamburg, as a growing city, has problems with soil sealing. So with the runoff, the water is faster. We have less possibilities for infiltration of the rainwater and so on. And since we have such a huge sewage system, which with about 6,000 kilometers of sewer system, we cannot maintain every corner of the sewage system once in a year. So we have to do and think about new strategies. And on the other hand, there's climate change. So we have higher temperatures, more heat waves and droughts. We have high tides on the Elbe, which means that we have restrictions for the drainage runoffs into the Elbe, and we have a higher probability of heavy rainfall. So this is what we are facing to our water and sanitation system. That means Hamburg is thinking since the 1990s how to meet that topic and how to reduce the risks of stormwater management. And the first thing what happened was a big invest to install these huge intercepting sewers under the combined sewage system to reduce the runoff of or the overflows of the combined sewer system into the rivers inside of Hamburg. This was a great success. So we have less discharges into the rivers now, and the quality of the water is increasing, but it's not enough to do this. So that's the reason why Hamburg started RISA. It's a project which is called Rainwater Infrastructure Adaptation. And there we have these goals to do flood mitigation, to prevent and prevention methods to protect the waters and the rivers in Hamburg, and to install or do an adaptation to the near natural water balance. That means that we are trying to reduce the runoff, to restore the water in the place where it's falling, and to use and reuse the water wherever we are able to. And since therefore we need a lot of stakeholders, it's a common task, and there is as well active and working the water and wastewater utility, but as well the environmental and energy agency, the different districts and municipalities, the urban planners and other actors are also involved in this project, because there are so many things we need to talk about. So what does this mean for the urban water management? We have started to have multifunctional plans for rainwater treatment here in the upper left level, where we can do some water retention, and the water is being cleaned by a plant-based sewage plant, especially for the street water which comes from the streets. We are trying to disconnect surfaces, maybe, for example, on school yards. This is the other example, but we have to keep the robust drainage system as well. And we are trying to have some redundant systems and try to implement circular resource efficient systems for the energy, water and material flows, like the Hamburg water cycle. This is one example you can see on the Hamburg Wasser website as well. Yeah, what does this mean for the city? We are trying to implement the sponge city concept. That means we're trying to increase the evaporation and the infiltration, and to keep the water everywhere where it's possible. So the best would be to have kind of blue-green streets, where the water of the streets, the rainwater, is kept in the streets and can be used for the trees, for example. So we have green roofs, or we are trying to implement green roofs and to reuse the rainwater of the rooftops, for example, and so on. These are the stakeholders we are having involved in our RISA project. So we have the Environmental Ministry for Environment, Climate, Energy and Agriculture. We have the State Ministry of Economy and Transport and Innovation, Hamburg Wasser, the citizens, different investors, the universities, the Senate, and the different district authorities should be involved, and we are working to increase the network on that. So what is RISA doing? We have different development paths. First of all, we are developing and working together to implement a strategy of the integrated stormwater adaptation in Hamburg. That means we are trying to develop plans for the whole city, which give guidelines for the districts, for example. We are improving the databases for planning and maps. We have a communication strategy with a website and brochures, and we are informing about the different levels of stormwater events and what kind of effects they do have. And we have many pilot projects which show how to implement stormwater management in Hamburg. Just have a look on the information system. So we have some maps which are on the building and paved areas, for example. We have a look on the topography and the drainage systems. We have a map which shows the infiltration potentials within the cities based on groundwater level and the soil construction and the geology and the groundwater table I already told about. One of the newest maps which is provided by the Hamburg GeoPortal is the stormwater map, which shows the low-lying areas which can be filled by rainwater. It's only topographic map without dynamic calculations. Hamburg is too big for that to do this once in a short time, but we are working on a dynamic map at the moment, and it will be implemented in the coming years. And the other topic is the stormwater index. We are Hamburg Wasser is collecting a lot of data on the rain events all over the city. So we have everywhere different stations which are collecting data on rains and on the runoff and the soil moisture and so on, and the data is collected in the stormwater index map, which can be shown in the internet as well. Here you have the internet address where you can have a look on it, and it's to raise the awareness that the citizens can have a look on it and have more aware or see how heavy the rain was which was fallen, and if it's just usual rain or it's kind of stronger rain which can be where the sewage system can deal with it, or it's just a catastrophic rain which is extraordinary and they need to do. Usually prevention by the citizens is necessary as well, so they have to have a look on their plot and to do some own safety measures. I want to show you now some examples what we are doing to raise awareness on the one hand, but to show what kind of possibilities do we have to have some retention on the different areas. So we are working in some cases together with schools and the authority which is responsible for the schoolyards. And there we have installed some rigos and some low-lying areas where water can be retained during heavy rainfalls. But this is sometimes included into educational programs, so the students can learn more about heavy rainfalls and how to prevent with these. And it's a great, a big and a successful program, I think. Another topic was to implement flood prevention in a playground development. So we have here an area which was flooded, or a school nearby this area was flooded very often, and the stormwater retention basin was too small. So there we were looking for some areas and places to prevent these events and to retain the water for heavy cloudbursts, for example. And there was then the possibility to use this playground. So there was this playground, this stormwater playground was constructed in 2013, and we have several water drains to water retention basins like this, which can be used for playing during dry times, but if there is a stormwater event, the water can be filled with that, and after that the water is drained to a protected well area and can contribute as well to the groundwater recharge. Another very successful example is a new example. It's a sporting facility in the Heinz-Klink-Stadion. It is a previous hotspot for flooding. There was a necessity to increase the drainage capacity in this area, but it was prohibited that the water would run here into this river. The river needed to be protected because it was too many water which would have been run down here. So Hamburg Wasser looked for an area where the water could be retained very easily, and they found this sports facility over there. It was a very lucky situation because the sports facility was lower than the street. So, and it was planned to reconstruct it. So we used this chance to redirect the surplus stormwater into this area. So here you can see how it works. So the water.
Sonja, could you please mind the time?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks,
so yeah, this is just another example. I just skipped this. We have also some research projects dealing with this topic. So so where are we now? So we have this relief programs. We have RISA as a community task. We have some information bases, the structure plan, some pilot projects. And now we start with a new phase because we have new political will with the climate plan of the Hamburg Senate, that we can implement more measures on RISA and rainwater infrastructure adaptation in Hamburg. And we are very happy that we have the ability to do more in the coming years to integrate stormwater management in the city and the landscape planning and have more blue and green possibilities and more blue and green in the city. Yeah, I skipped the summary now and I'm looking for the questions. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sonja. I know you have a lot to tell. And you have a lot of interesting examples from Hamburg, but unfortunately we have to mind a little bit the time. So
yeah, it's fine.
I would propose to make the questions after the next presentation, if there's some time. And but once again, thank you very much for the many insights from Hamburg. So we come to our next presentation. I'm very happy to welcome Pierre van Rensburg here. He's born Namibian who, after completing his education in South Africa and the UK, returned to Namibia to become involved in the water sector in the country, and his career spans over 20 years of working was in public and the private sector, and until 2017 he served as a strategic executive for infrastructure, water and technical services at the Windhoek City Council. And he also experienced in this position the water crisis of the city between 2015 and 2017. So really a lot of experience and a lot of practical insights that he will share with us. We are very happy to have you here, Pierre, and the floor is yours. You're still muted.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, and you can also see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As Michael said, I'm Pierre van Rensburg. I work for the municipality of Windhoek. I'm going to share with you some of what we have done to try and mitigate the impacts or lessen the impacts of climate change on our water supply through the incorporation of some supply methodologies, which maybe is not so common everywhere in the world. So Albert Einstein said this about the development of atomic weapons some time ago, but I think it is very relevant for today in terms of the challenges that we face for climate change. So looking at the issue at hand, if you consider the global desert scenario, and more specifically, if you look at Africa, you will find the Sahara Desert in the northern parts of the continent there. But if you look a little bit further to the southwest, you will find the Namib Desert along the southwestern seaboard, as well as the Kalahari Desert just adjacent on the inland. And that happened to be exactly where you will find Namibia. So if we look at surface water availability on the continent, it reflects very much the same scenario. You have the Sahara Desert in the northern parts, but then here you can see the outlines of the country of Namibia, and you can clearly see that there are no surface water resources anywhere to be found inland in the country. But just quickly looking at the climate of Namibia, you will also see the impact of the desert landscape on the climate. So on the top left-hand corner, you look at rainfall. So everything sort of along the western seaboard and south of the country receives in the region of 200 to 250 or less rainfall. The same with evaporation. It's slightly reduced because of the mist belt along the coast, but everything to the south, especially the southeast, you will find heavy evaporation in the order of 2,500 millimeters per annum or more. In terms of rainfall variability, much the same picture. So you will see that everything that's not, or that's kind of yellow, that's lower than this beige, has a rainfall variability of 40 to 50% or more, reaching 100% or more along the Namib Desert coast. So not surprisingly, then you will find a water deficit basically everywhere in the country, but more extreme around Windhoek. You see Windhoek in the central areas there, as well as the Namib coastal areas and the far south of the country. Just a brief introduction to Windhoek as the capital city. It's about 450,000 population. It's located on the central inland plateau, so it's a 1,650 meters on average above sea level, so quite high. And the city is surrounded by mountains. On the left side, you see a picture sort of taken in a northwesterly direction. You can see the mountains in the background with the city basin in front. There's just a picture of some curios, beads working, and also some guys selling kapana, which is a very popular local street food. Windhoek, being the only major city in the country, is then also the main economic, social, and cultural center in the country. So getting back to the topic of water supply, as I've already mentioned, Windhoek sort of slap bang in the middle of the country. But in terms of availability of surface water, there are some rivers shared with Angola, the Kunene, as well as the Okavango, Zambezi shared with Zambia, and some lower rivers shared between Botswana and Zimbabwe. But for Windhoek, the nearest surface water to the north is about 700 kilometers away from the city. And to the south, it is the Orange River shared with South Africa. It's more than 800 kilometers away. So really nothing that the city can draw on from a water supply perspective. And that is against the background of an annual rainfall of around 350 to 360 millimeters, and then evaporation, as I've already mentioned, which is massive, several times the rainfall, leading to a big water deficit. Then just the supply scheme for Windhoek. It's quite a complicated picture, but I'm just going to highlight something specific here. It's the 3 surface water dams. So the Omataku Dam, which is about 150 kilometers north of the city, the Van Bach Dam, which is about 70 kilometers north of the city, and the Swakopmund Dam, which is about 100 kilometers northwest of the city. So Windhoek is lower in the lower corner here. And then also something to note is the 2 aquifers. There's a northern aquifer, which basically supplies the whole northern area, but provision has also been made to transfer water from this aquifer all the way down to Windhoek. And then obviously the Windhoek aquifer, which I'll explain a little bit more later on. Something also from a climate point of view to note is that 2 of the 3 supply dams sit on the same river and obviously shares the same drainage catchment. So from a climate perspective, if that fails or has a high variability in terms of rainfall, then both those dams would be affected. Okay. Then from a climate change in the country, as pretty much everywhere else, there's a expected increase in temperatures, both summer and winter. But I think what is more important from a water supply point of view is the fact that we expect a total rainfall decrease of between 15 to 20%. And on the other hand, we expect an evaporation increase of 10 to 15%, which obviously will greatly impact the fact that we obtain our water from surface water dams. Then just putting it in context in the African continent, just resonates what I've just said. So the increase in temperature expected, if you look at the scale, that's around 3 degrees. And then overall, there would be a decrease in rainfall or precipitation, which is in the order of 10 to 15%. Interesting to note is the big reduction in winter rainfall expected, which obviously would affect Cape Town, which is predominantly a winter rainfall area. Something we've seen in single day, several years worth of rainfall fall in the desert, leaving us pictures like this. But on the other hand, if you look at this is normally grassland savanna, but these have been impacted with long or prolonged periods of below average or almost no rainfall, leaving you scenes like that. So how do we deal with this from a water supply point of view? So obviously water demand management, Michael already mentioned that in introduction, is sort of a first go-to. Then we have these three, which is both non-potable or irrigation reuse as well as direct potable reuse. And then obviously we have the managed aquifer recharge scheme. So because of the impact this had on the last drought, I'm going to focus mainly on this last two schemes that we've implemented. So the Windhoek Managed Aquifer Recharge Scheme, if I'm trying to explain this to you in a single slide, then what you have here is basically the Windhoek Basin depicted by these buildings here. And then you have the Awas Mountains, which sit southeast of the Windhoek. And in between, you have the aquifer, which is basically a highly porous fractured quartzite aquifer. And that area is cut off. So the normal drainage of the water is to the north, sort of underneath the city. But there is a schist, a micaceous schist layer, which basically seals off this aquifer, creating a basin between the natural recharge area and the cutoff line on the city. And that basically is an underground storage area that is utilized for water supply to the city. And the basic concept is that in the years when we have plenty of rainfall and dams are full, we will actually transfer those water from the surface water dams where evaporation is quite high to an underground storage to try and make sure that the storage is full to the brim, that if we hit a period when the surface water fails, we can actually supply the city for an extended period of time from this underground reservoir. So just the figures in short of the concept. So estimated losses from the surface water dams over a 10-year period is about 50%, which is quite large. And that is against the losses from the aquifer, which is predicted to be 3% or modeled to be 3% or less. Currently, we are drilling to a depth of 450 or just a little bit deeper than that. And that enables us to access a target slice of water of about 250 meters. Currently, most of the infrastructure is equipped or installed to be dual recharge and abstraction. But we've actually seen that practically it works better. So the newer infrastructure, we've done separate stations for recharge and abstraction. But the main thing is that estimated storage is about 80 to 90 million cubic meters. And that can supply the city between 3 to 4 years in an emergency situation. And the impact of combining the aquifer storage with the surface water is actually an increased yield in the supply system of around 40%. Just to show you the main, what we call water banking areas. So the city is indicated in red there. You can see the development. The Awas Mountains to the southeast and the aquifer lying in between has got various compartments which are targeted for both recharge and abstraction. Something we realized which greatly impacts on the scheme is the fact that because this aquifer area is so porous and highly infiltratable, we actually realized that it's also highly vulnerable to surface pollution. And this probably led to one of the most or biggest impact political decisions, because it was decided a few years back to actually block out this entire southern area as a no development zone. And you can say in the moment, the development is all planning to the north. The impact of this is the fact that around the city you find mountains, and this was really the only remaining flat area for development to take place. So quite an important decision to actually block this off from a water supply perspective and not allow development to take place here. Moving on to the reuse part of it, as you can see, I'm not going to go through all of this, but already conceptualized in the early 1950s, gained a lot of momentum in the 1960s because of a water shortage at the time, and finally implemented in 1968, which is very, very early if you look at the global context. Through the years, a number of process upgrades as well as extensions, capacity extensions, and currently we are looking into feasibility studies to expand the system with a second DPR plant, which is planned in the next 5 years or so. Just something which is a big fundamental of the reuse in Windhoek, because we do direct potable reuse, we only use domestic wastewater. So the system is designed that the majority of the basin, if you look at the green, actually drains to a single point on the northwest around there. And that is the point where we do the wastewater treatment and also the reclamation part. During the 70s and 80s, there was another big political decision, and all industries which generate wet effluent, industrial effluent, was moved to the northern part of the city, which now has a separate drainage area with treatment in the far northern corner. The areas marked in yellow and pink purple, that's what we are targeting for the next phase of DPR, together with intensification in the already existing basin. I'm not going to say much about the process drain, but just interesting to note is that although this is direct potable reclamation, there is no RO in this process drain. The principles, I've already touched on the fact that we use only domestic wastewater. I think the other important one is the fact that the design is a multiple barrier design, which has become sort of a standard everywhere in the world. And then the fact that we blend the final effluent to sort of mimic the effect of discharge into a natural buffer. So we blend it with water from a natural resource, being the surface water, in a 1 to 2/3 ratio. So getting to the actual point in the 2015-17 drought. So what you can see, the red here is actually droughts occurring. And this is one in the early 80s, sort of mid-90s, and the most recent one. And the blue bar shows you above average rainfall, the brown or orange gives you below average, and the black line gives you total runoff actually received in the dams. So what we've noted was with previous droughts, you had large periods of below average rainfall, which eventually led to a situation that the surface water failed. Again, the same year. But in the last drought, we actually saw that we didn't have that much. There was a short lead time. So because we had a lot of rain, the dams were full, and we thought we were comfortable, but very, very quickly the dams failed. And the result of that was, even though the actual rainfall was maybe not that low, the runoff was much reduced. So we had very little, if any, rainfall at all. And we've seen that this is an effect that we've noticed in the last few years, that the rain tends to come later in the season. And the impact of that is that by then the surface or the vegetation growth on the surface is so much that your runoff is much reduced. So we don't actually see so much inflow into the dams. So how did we deal with that? I've already mentioned that we've increased the DPR. So both the potable, which is the gray roof area, as well as the irrigation recharge was up to try and supply the deficit coming from the dams. On the recharge side, we were very lucky. As you can see here, this is a period of high abstraction. The blue shows abstraction from the aquifer. That was before the DPR and the dams were built, so that actually went down. The green shows actual recharge or artificial injection into the aquifer. So that started in the early 2000s. So the black line is the actual aquifer level that you can see. So it started picking up with artificial recharge, and we were greatly helped by a massive rainy season, which brought us about 3 to 4 times the annual rainfall, which really allowed us to start the drought period with a more or less full aquifer. So the only thing to do was to make sure that we can actually withdraw the water. So we had emergency access. So these white dots were 9 boreholes already drilled at that time, but not installed. And we added 12 more deep, large diameter boreholes to be able to access the water. And that allowed us to increase the abstraction capacity by about a 5 or 6 fold. Also, we allowed access by the industrial areas to the saline northern aquifer, which were previously unused, and that we keep in existence so that if there's a future water shortage or supply, they can disconnect from the public system, allowing us that saving and connect to the saline aquifer, which is then should be then in a position to supply them. So just as the last slide, Michael, the impact of this on our water supply. So normally we get about 76% of the water from surface water dams. That is the normal situation. About 15-16% from potable reuse, 4% non-potable, and 4% from the aquifer. What happened was when this portion fell away and the dams actually failed, we had to make up this massive supply portion from something else. And there the aquifer actually stepped in. So by the time we had completed the emergency implementation of the aquifer project, we were able to supply 60% of the demand from the aquifer, 3% still from surface water, actually the northern aquifers, a massive 30% of about 1/3 came from reuse, and 8% came from non-potable reuse. And obviously that is against the background of a 25% demand reduction. So clearly you can see that going forward and with the expected climate change impacts that we are expecting, we really need to be in a position to be able to have alternative supply to supply the city in the case when the surface water fails. Thank you very much, Michael. That's the end of it.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for this very interesting insights and also for highlighting what role city planning and urban city planning plays in the setting up such recharge schemes and how really the groundwater is being used as a water bank for times of droughts. As I picked this term off of I think of one of your previous presentations I heard, and I very much like the idea of having groundwater as a safety net for times of droughts. And I would like to ask maybe if there are some urgent questions from the Water Pavilion in Glasgow that could be raised now. I know we are a little bit short in time. Otherwise, please give me a sign, maybe colleagues from Glasgow. If not, I think we will, also considering the time, I will hand over to my colleague Ramon Brandführer, who is also working with me in BJR and our project on policy advice on groundwater. So I'm sure we would have to discuss a lot of if we were on at a real conference, but I think we will have to wait until pandemic is over for discussing more in detail with the questions that might be raised. So I will hand over to my colleague Ramon, please, to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Do you see the presentation? Just to check.
No.
No. Okay. So I think we are short in time, so I prefer then just to skip the presentation. I thank you for giving me the last words of the session. I think we had some really interesting, innovative approaches today in urban planning, and that had all of them had some common practices that these approaches have. So they all very holistic and integrating measures, and they all finally close the water cycle somehow. And whether it is if it is about storage of water for dry seasons, or if it is about finally slowing down the water flooding and the surface flow. So I think these approaches like that, they are urgently needed for adaptation of extreme weather events, and we have seen that, especially here in Germany. We have seen what these extreme weather events, what can happen. So we had the flooding in the Eifel areas in Western Germany in summertime, with 220 people died in that weather event. And on the other hand, we have droughts like in Cape Town, the day zero, which was not the only drought, I think. We have also on other places in the world, like Chennai or in Western Africa, in Bouaké, there was a severe drought a couple of years ago. So cities need to adapt to this situation, and I think today we have seen two really good approaches to it, and I'm sure there are many more approaches within the world to adapt to these situations. And I think it's time is now to look for these approaches and to change business as usual, and to look how to become flexible in the water management to the circumstances. And I think the time is ready for upscaling in many cities, and it's good that we see that it works out and finally improves the situation and the livelihood of many citizens. With these words, I like to close this session and thank you for attendance. And I can just repeat that I think we should keep eye open for good approaches and to close the water cycle and bring space for buffers. Thank you very much.